और जिस तरह मैं जिक्र किया सी कि बीती रात नूं जिहड़ी डिबेट हुई है उहदी गल करांगे थोड़ी जी डिटेल दे विच मेरे नाल सैन गरेवाल दा पॉइंटर तो हाज़र ने ते नाले थोड़ी जी गल असीं करांगे पील दे विच इस वेले की सिचुएशन है खास तौर ते ते ब्रैम्पटन दी भी गल कर लांगे थोड़ी जी कि ब्रैम्पटन दे विच इस वेले की सिचुएशन है 2 तारीख नूं वोटां पैणियां 19 तारीख तो एडवांस पोलिंग भी शुरू है वैसे पोलिंग इस वेले भी चल रही है तुसी चैक करो थोड़ा जिहा ओंटारियो इलैक्शन की जिहड़ी वैबसाइट ते तुहानूं उत्थे भी इन्फॉर्मेशन मिल जाएगी। तो बीती रात नूं खूब जिहड़ी बहस हुई एक दूजे ते ज़बरदस्त हमले किए गए 4 उम्मीदवार सी असी लाइव टैलीकास्ट किया इसनूं प्रवासी टीवी ते तुसीं जरूर देखिया होएगा तुहाडे अपने भी नज़रिया होएगा इहदे बारे कोई ना कोई कुछ कॉल भी लवांगे बाद चों कि तुसीं की महसूस किया तुहाडे हिसाब नाल कौन विनर रहा कौन लूजर रहा। तो सैन गरेवाल नूं पुछदे हां कि इन्हां दा की नज़रिया है। सैन वेलकम रेडियो प्रवासी एंड गुड मॉर्निंग।
Good morning, Mr. Saini.
Okay, so this was very important debate for all the 4 leaders. Mr. Ford was on a defensive mode because all 3 were attacking upon him, which was obvious because being premier, he had to defend his record. But on the other hand side, Green Party leader Mike Schneider, I think he was exactly in attacking mode all the time during the debate. Andrea Horwath and Stephen Del Duca was also under attack because of the Premier Catherine Wynne government. So overall, what is your opinion, your analysis on this debate?
Yeah, I thought Mr. Schreiner and Mr. Ford did quite well. I thought they both did what they had to do. They had a game plan. Their parties and whoever prepared them for the debate clearly had a strategy. And I thought Mr. Ford and Mr. Schreiner really did well within that strategy. You're right. I agree. Mr. Ford was on the defensive, but I feel that there was not any decisive blow that landed in all of the challenges to his leadership. You know, my belief is that for one, he handled the pandemic relatively well, especially for a conservative government. It was quite a progressive, more of a left-leaning type of approach to the pandemic. So I don't think there's a lot of things that could stick. Obviously, with long-term care and some of those other issues, he's a bit vulnerable. But yeah, for the most part, I thought, he, like you said, very defensive, very scripted, didn't move off his script. He impressed me that he remained calm and on message. Mike Schreiner, though, like I said, I thought he did a really good job. Like, to try to show more Ontarians, even if it's another 2 or 3%, that they don't have to vote for the Liberals or the NDP if they align with those sort of more progressive left-leaning values, especially if climate action and environmental issues are important to you. But even touching on some of the other areas that aren't usually associated with the Greens, I thought Mike Schreiner did really well. The other 2, oh boy, I was not impressed with Andrea Horwath or Stephen Del Duca.
Okay.
I thought when Doug Ford said that Andrea Horwath was essentially, out of touch and losing relevance, the PCs are picking up union support, this sort of thing is really not helping the NDP. And I just didn't think Andrea, did very much to stake out a real position for the NDP. And then Del Duca, he just seems so desperate. Like you said, constant attack mode, and then, mentioning his family, his daughters repeatedly, clearly trying to compete with the NDP to win over, for example, the teachers, some of the large public sector, groups, especially the teachers. I thought that was Del Duca, one of his main strategies, but he just did not perform well, in my opinion.
Okay, so we will be interviewing today Karen Littlewood. She is president of Ontario's Secondary School Teachers Federation, and definitely we will be talking to her about the education policies of all the four parties, whom they are endorsing, why they are endorsing. So education was at the forefront, so was the rising prices of housing, affordable housing, and health and climate change. And I was surprised to see 413 highway was also at the center stage.
So, I mean, it's been part of the PC platform for two elections now. It wasn't front and center in 2018, but if you remember, it was on the 2018 PC election platform. But now the highway plan is, as you said, a central part of the PC platform. And I think it's because they see the ridings in the 905, the suburban belt, but even in some of the areas outside of the suburbs, like, for example, the Bradford bypass near Lake Simcoe, you know, those ridings that they want to shore up, they want to make sure they stay blue, but primarily in the GTA, right? Like, it's simple math. You know, Mr. Saini, the Liberals had held 26 of the GTA ridings not in downtown Toronto. So if you include Etobicoke, Scarborough, Durham, York, Peel, Halton, after the 2014 election, the Liberals had held 26 of those ridings. And after the 2018 election, 4 years later, they held one, Scarborough-Guildwood.
Yeah.
And almost all of them, the PCs had 32 of those same communities. I'll repeat them: Scarborough, Etobicoke, Peel, York, Durham, and Halton. The PCs took 32. And the 413 highway, the highway platform, is a calculation that in Brampton, in Mississauga, you know, I don't think they have to worry about the Caledon riding, but, you know, parts of Vaughan, Halton, all of these other places, you know, in Durham, where they're going to get rid of the highway tolls. This is a calculation that these are commuter ridings. People use their cars. They want highways. I don't know if that's going to work. I don't know if that's true. If people in these 905 areas, you know, do believe that strongly in highways. I think certainly there are more and more people who think highways are bad. It's a bad idea. It's yesterday's planning. It's bad for the environment. It just creates more congestion. We should be investing in transit, in trains, in regional transportation. So I guess we'll have to see, Mr. Saini. And to your point about education, I just want to ask you a question. I didn't think Andrea and Stephen Del Duca did a very good job of painting Doug Ford and the PCs as the enemies of education. You know, increased class sizes, you know, lack of increases in staffing, other investments in education, really no, you know, major moves to broaden and expand, you know, the curriculum and the public education systems. I didn't think they did a very good job of appealing to voters with children in public schools, families who are scared of what the PCs might do with the education system. What did you think?
Yeah, you're absolutely right, and I'm quite agree to you. But I was really surprised by the body language of Mr. Duca. Though he has a very good plan on education as compared to others, but somehow he was over aggressive, which I realized.
I agree. I found it off-putting. It's, you know, one thing, Mr. Saini, people like you and me, we forget because, you know, we deal so much in the policy. We look at the platform so carefully. We look at the budgeting. You know, we look at the voting record, the track record. We tend to do that as journalists. But a lot of the public, it comes down to likability. Like, do you like the person? And I'm sorry, I have to say, Mr. Del Duca, he did not come across as very likable.
Okay, actually, what I feel is that this was his first debate. Andrea is too experienced now. So is Mr. Ford. But Mr. Mike Schneider, he's really surprised me. I think he was the well-prepared guy amongst all of them, four of them.
He didn't surprise me. I've interviewed him. We've had him on our podcast. The Pointer's done extensive stories with him. He's really impressive. He's a smart person. I think he is very policy-oriented. And he clearly, like, just watching him yesterday, he felt to me like the leader. He felt like the person, Ford was quite defensive. He was very scripted. He's not a good public speaker in any circumstance. Andrea, I don't want to get into that. Del Duca, we've already talked about. But Schreiner, to me, he looked like a premier.
Yeah. Okay, so coming back to Peel, Mr. Ford was defending his record on health funding, and again he was saying that 60 to 70 hospitals are being built, lots of funding, lots of investment in health, but he never mentioned about Brampton. And I don't know how the PC will be able to defend their investment in Peel and particularly in Brampton.
Yeah, and if I was Pravneet Sarkaria and Amarjot Sandhu right now, this morning, the two PC MPPs in Brampton, or they're the incumbents, so they're no longer MPPs for now, but for these last 4 years, Mr. Sarkaria and Mr. Sandhu served as the PC representatives in Brampton, and I don't understand why Ford wouldn't have just spent 30 seconds highlighting what he has claimed he's going to do. And what worries me is what the NDP and to a lesser extent the Liberals have been saying, that Ford and the PCs are once again playing games with these promises in Brampton, that we have still to see a proper, unlike Mississauga, where, the RFP has gone out, the exact plan, how many beds, what this is going to look like, the new hospital in Mississauga, there's no question marks around it. We know what it's going to be. The process has already begun to have it built. Brampton, we are blind. We are in the dark. It's been we know from what one conversation with one of our good sources, a prominent, Brampton advocate who met with Osler, he was told, look, it's not going to be a hospital. This Peel Memorial Phase 2 development, it's going to be just a support facility for Brampton Civic. There will be no acute care beds, or if they have acute care beds, we're talking about maybe 10 or 12, just to support the urgent care facility. And other concerns that, it's only going to be 250 beds. Brampton needs probably about 1,000 beds right now. And by the time that hospital gets built, Peel Memorial expansion, they're going to need a third hospital. And that's where, again, Andrea Horvath and the NDP, they need to communicate this better to Brampton, that their platform is to turn Peel Memorial into a full-service hospital with hundreds more beds than what the PCs are offering. But additionally, the NDP platform is calling for it has a third hospital for Brampton, which is what the city desperately needs. And again, this is the same thing with healthcare expansion across the province. The Ford PCs talk about the $60, $70 billion, but we don't see, where exactly in the communities that need it the most, show us the delivery of those investments. Put it on paper. Let's get it into the budget. For example, we once again had another budget that is very vague regarding Brampton. But it's the same thing for many other communities around the province. And the concern is, and we've seen this before, right? Ahead of an election, you make all these promises, you throw out these numbers, and then communities like Brampton, as the Liberals did this to Brampton. Mr. Saini, no one knows this better than you. Yeah. Because you were at the forefront of the fight. You practically led the struggle, to get Civic built.
Okay, my last question, because we are running
And you saw that there were so many broken promises.
Yes. I'm asking all the leaders every time whenever they visit Brampton the same question again and again. Okay, so Andrea Harworth is coming regularly to Brampton. I have seen during the last 10-15 days. I think she has come third or fourth time. I have not seen Mr. Ford there, not Mr. Duca yet. Okay, so far, which I believe is that NDP is more aggressive in its campaigning, more organized, because I'm attending more or less all the election events here in Brampton particularly. So what is your analysis? It's too early to ask you, San. What is your analysis? Is it going to be status quo as far as, because Conservatives had 2 and NDP had 3. So what do you think is going to change something during this election, or it will be status quo?
Well, no, I think it's very fluid, actually. I think Amarjot Sandhu, he could be in trouble. He's a terrible candidate. I mean, he's done absolutely nothing for Brampton other than, acquiesce and do whatever he's told by Doug Ford. He's serving his party, not the people of Brampton, his constituents. I mean, he was just a disaster. I mean, he was charged with a provincial offense for having illegal suites in his basement. How do you have an elected official, or at the time, I think he was running for office, but then even after he won, he didn't get them to conform. He didn't comply with the laws, and he was charged, with an offense for having these illegal suites that could put these poor tenants in danger. Are they like international students from India? I don't know who he had living there, but God only knows the conditions. We actually saw pictures of the legal suite that he had, and it didn't look very safe to me. And this guy is like an elected official, so he's definitely in trouble. I mean, he's done nothing in the legislature. He parrots whatever he's told by the party. He didn't even show up, for the Remembrance Day ceremony his first year. His name was called. He was supposed to be there. Didn't even show up for Remembrance Day. Sarkaria, I think he's a little bit more safe because he has more of a standing and with a portfolio, and it's a fairly prominent one. And he's, I think, a little bit more well-regarded. He has more visibility. He has more of a profile. But I'll tell you, the other seats, Brampton Centre, I think Sarah Singh of the NDP, who was the deputy leader of the party, I think she's in a real fight. Charmaine Williams she has been a Brampton councillor these last 4 years, and very popular amongst a lot of the constituents, a lot of the community. The Pointer would often hear from readers how impressed they were with Charmaine Williams' performance inside City Hall, advocating for certain issues. And now that she's running for the PCs against Sarah Singh, high-profile candidate Charmaine Williams, I think Sarah Singh could be in a lot of trouble, especially if the NDP as a whole, as a party, are wavering. And then you have the reality that the Liberals are probably going to win more votes because it's not the same situation as 2018 when there was such an anti-Liberal, anti-Kathleen Wynne sentiment.
Okay.
But then, again, Brampton North, could the NDP be in trouble there? They booted out Kevin Yard. And is that going to come back to haunt them? Sandeep Singh is being pushed big time by Jagmeet Singh, who's showing up constantly. And I think I've heard that Sandeep Singh, who's the candidate for the NDP, has even been well known to Jagmeet Singh and Guratan Singh, their family, or something like that. So they're really pushing for him. But is that going to be enough? Harinder Mali, she's a pretty strong candidate. But Mr. McGregor, the PCs, could he come up the middle? If the NDP and the Liberals split that riding, could the PC come up again, as I said, through the middle because of this vote splitting? So, yeah, I think it's very fluid in a lot of the Brampton races.
What about Brampton East?
Oh, I don't think Mr. Singh has any concerns. I mean, that him and his brother have developed such a huge following right? They're almost not even politicians. It's as though they're celebrities. Do I like that? Do I agree with that? No. I wish that Guratan Singh and his brother Jagmeet at the federal level would be a little bit more policy-oriented. I wish they'd be a little bit more substantive. But the fact is, they are very popular. Do you think Guratan Singh has any concern?
Yeah, I don't think so even. Anyway, it's too early to say, to talk about that. But still, I always admire your analysis. You are working at the ground level, at the grassroots level. We'll have another roundup before elections, San, on all these 5 ridings and plus a couple of ridings in Mississauga and Caledon. Okay?
Absolutely. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, San. And San Garewal, ਜਿਹੜੇ ਬਰੈਂਪਟਨ ਦੀਆਂ 5 ਰਾਈਡਿੰਗਸ ਬਾਰੇ ਆਪੋ ਆਪਣੇ ਐਨਾਲਿਸਿਸ ਦੇ ਰਹੇ ਸੀ ਤੇ ਐਨਾਲਿਸਿਸ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਕਾਫੀ ਵਧੀਆ ਤਰੀਕੇ ਨਾਲ ਕੱਲ ਦੀ ਰਾਤ ਦੀ ਡਿਬੇਟ ਦਾ ਵੀ ਕੀਤਾ ਹੈ